Marketplace is next on the show tonight. In a dynamic job market, there's going to be some friction. There's an economic term for it. It's called labor churn.
Where companies fail, people decide to leave their jobs, and others are opened and created at the same time.
A look at the labor market now. That's next on Marketplace. We'll be back with All Things Considered at 7 o'clock. Starting to cool down, but still pretty hot out there. 85 degrees right now in Lower Manhattan. WNYC at 6:30.
WNYC is supported by Abramarama presenting The Last Twins, a new documentary narrated by Liev Schreiber about Erno Zwiespiekel, who risked everything to save dozens of young twins from almost certain death at Auschwitz. Opens Friday at Quad Cinema.
WNYC, independent journalism in the public interest. 93.9 FM and AM 820. NPR News and the New York Conversation.
Marketplace is supported by Raymond James, tailored wealth management, banking, and capital markets solutions for clients' unique needs. Disclosures at raymondjames.com.
On the program today, some jobs data, a little political economy, also trampolines. From American Public Media, this is Marketplace.
Marketplace is supported by Progressive Insurance. On the road and at home, customers can simplify their insurance needs and protect what's important by bundling home and auto with Progressive Insurance. Learn more about Progressive and bundling at progressive.com. And by Commvault, helping companies discover the minimum data, apps, and functionality they need to remain viable and stay in business after an attack so they can become a continuous business. And by the Peter G. Peterson Foundation, a nonpartisan organization dedicated to raising awareness and accelerating action on America's fiscal challenges to build a brighter economic future for the next generation. Learn more at pgpf.org.
In Los Angeles, I'm Kai Ryssdal. It is Thursday today, the 5th of June. Good as always to have you along, everybody. One of the fun things you do as a business and economics reporter is try to figure out from the data you have what the data you're going to get is going to be. I say that with an eye toward the calendar, which tells me that tomorrow we're going to get the May jobs report from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. We have in hand, as of this morning, the regular weekly data we get on people making first-time claims for unemployment benefits. 247,000 was the number, which is pretty much in the range of where it's been over the past year or so. However, and with an eye toward tomorrow's jobs report, layoffs are in the air. Another round reported at Microsoft earlier this week. It's second in as many months. Procter & Gamble said today it's making cuts to 7,000 jobs, about 15%. This morning, Challenger Gray and Christmas, the oft-cited outplacement firm, told us companies announced just shy of 700,000 job cuts between January 1st and the end of May. That's 80% more than the same period last year. All in all, the numbers suggest a rising amount of what economists call labor churn, which is where Marketplace's Stephanie Hughes comes in.
People enter and leave the workforce all the time. They graduate and get a job or quit their current position and start a new one. Maybe they retire or get laid off. All of this turnover is labor churn. And UBS economist Jonathan Pingle says in a healthy economy, you can think of it as being a kind of matchmaker.
The more churn there is in some sense, the better kind of match you're going to find when you're looking for work or an employer's looking for you.
As individuals, we think of getting laid off as being really bad. But Pingle says layoffs are also a regular part of the economic cycle.
In the healthy economy, there's still actually a pretty brisk pace of layoffs every month, but we're just replacing that with more job openings, jobs being created, and new hiring to offset it.
But layoffs also come with a cost to the employers doing the laying off. Andy Challenger with Challenger Gray and Christmas says after companies reduce their workforces, they'll see more employee turnover.
Because people don't feel safe at the organization, and they also see productivity drop.
Challenger says the number of layoffs that are happening at the moment has him worried.
The type of cutting that we're seeing right now isn't something that we typically see outside of a recession.
He points out the job cuts, they're happening more to people who make more money. For example, managers, as opposed to regular worker bees.
So far, if it continues to extend, it'll likely hit the whole labor market.
Not everyone is as worried.
What we have today, I don't think is a sign of an unhealthy amount of churn.
Stephen Juneau is a senior U.S. economist at Bank of America Global Research. He points out lately the U.S. economy has been adding over 150,000 jobs on average every month.
That's not indicative of a slowing economy. It's indicative, I think, of a stable and healthy labor market.
In tomorrow's jobs report, Juneau's going to be watching to see how long people are staying unemployed. Job churn's only good when people who lose jobs eventually land in the right new ones. I'm Stephanie Hughes for Marketplace.
On Wall Street today, generally down. One particular electric car company led the way. We'll have the details when we do the numbers. We cover a whole lot of economic indicators on this program. There are jobs numbers, May figures out tomorrow, as I said a minute ago. There's housing data and GDP. Here's another that deals with ups and downs.
Where are we?
We are at Airborne Trampoline Park in Linden, Utah.
Yep, trampolines.
This is the largest trampoline park in Utah County. Might be the largest one in the state of Utah. Second largest is my other trampoline park down in Draper, about 20 minutes south of us.
You have two trampoline parks.
We have two trampoline parks.
Chris Matern is the operations manager here. It's a 55,000 square foot warehouse with trampolines and an indoor playground, lots of other stuff for kids to bounce around on. You have possibly been dragged to a place like this for a kid's birthday party at some point. You can find them all over the country. The thing that makes the high concentration of trampoline parks here in Utah County a relevant economic indicator, though, it's what it tells you about how demographics affect the economy.
Talk to me about demand for your product here.
You know, Utah is an interesting market in that we have the largest family sizes. It was funny when we swapped to a new point of sale system not too long ago. They're like, okay, so parents have to sign waivers for their kids. We usually average 4 kids to a waiver per parent. I said, great, we need 8. And they're like, no, seriously? I said, no, seriously, 8. And sometimes that may not be enough, but that should handle a majority of our guests.
Yeah.
And when they were asking us about our locations, they're like, you have 2 50,000 square foot parks within 20 minutes of each other. Aren't you guys in competition with yourself? And it's like, nope. And in between me and my other park, I might have a dozen other family entertainment centers. And there's still enough to go around just because Utah families are so big.
As you know, Neela Richardson and I, she's the chief economist at ADP, have been in Utah County for our series, The Age of Work, about how this economy is changing as U.S. workers get older. Utah County is a counterpoint to the aging American labor force. It's one of the youngest counties in the nation. 30% of the population here is under the age of 18, and that is a business opportunity.
Not for nothing, but there's only one kid on all these trampolines.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, it is school day.
That's true. I was just looking for a little bounce action, that's all.
We were there off-peak hours, but this company does 7 figures of annual revenue at each of its 2 locations.
How much does it cost? What's the ticket cost here?
I was just doing this. So if you got, 0 to 2 is $5.99, 3 to 4 is $14, $13.99, and then 5
and that's
and up
all day.
All
So
day.
stay and play all day.
5 and up on a weekday is $20. So if you've got 6 kids from 2 to 7 years old, I can't do the math, but it's $100 and something.
Yeah, you'd be well over $100.
It's not nothing.
It's not nothing.
It's the cost of a movie.
It's probably, honestly, a little bit less nowadays than a
cheaper
movie.
than a movie.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you have some thoughts of what could happen if the economy slowed?
So if we really start to see a recession, and if we really start to see that household income, and if we really start to see unemployment numbers spike, again, we talk about the advantages of Utah. Our unemployment rate in Utah is a 3.2. The national average is a 4.1. But if we see that unemployment in Utah start to spike back up above 4%, 5%, 6%, one of the first things families are really going to cut out of that household budget is a visit to a place like ours. Yeah. We're hoping they would cut out all of the streaming services first and say, you know what, let's support a local business. Let's go. No, it's not going to happen. I can't compete.
As I said, Airborne's a great business opportunity in this kid-centric economy. In fact, the owner's planning to expand by the end of this year. But the thing is, that opportunity we've been talking about, the demographics of Utah County, it creates obstacles too.
Here, let's walk here, and then we'll kind of walk down. You'll see what we're building. Okay. So we have about...
Daniel Thomas is a commercial real estate developer in Utah County. His office is just down the street, actually, from Airborne Linden in a brand new mixed-use development called Valley Grove.
We own all this land. I shouldn't say all of it, but most of this over here.
He took us up to the vacant top floor of one of his company's office buildings. Big picture windows looking out over Utah Lake, a lot of empty land and housing developments out west, and a construction site right by the freeway.
This building's the last building we built. We're a speculative builder, so we'll build a building with the intent of it being 100% vacant when we finish it.
Gutsy move, man.
It's worked out well for us. What we found is most businesses aren't deciding what real estate they need 24 months out. They're usually calling us saying, I've got a problem. What do you have?
Daniel's tall and fit. He's an ultramarathoner, wearing a rubber ducky tie that day. He's not originally from Utah. Moved here from the East Coast about 11 years ago.
What are you doing here?
Making money.
He works for a Baltimore-based commercial real estate firm. It's called St. John Properties.
I was hired to basically find a new market, find somewhere outside of the Mid-Atlantic that we could invest for the next 50-plus years.
Are you the guy who picked Utah?
I picked Utah.
Okay, how come?
I'd boil it down to 3 reasons. 1, just natural organic population growth. It's growing. If there are people coming to an area, I don't have to try as hard to fill buildings. I don't have to go in and throw elbows with competitors. And second reason, regulatory environment. These municipalities, most of them appreciate growth, want growth. A lot of places where we conduct our business, it's not always welcome.
So you do a lot of commercial office space and maybe restaurants as well?
We have built, I was just doing the math this morning, 26 restaurants just right here in this project in the last 6 years.
Wow.
But here's what's interesting about that. They're almost all fast casual, quick serve. I was trying to figure out why that was. And I don't know if this is just my opinion, but there's a very, very young demographic here.
Right.
There's not a lot of money for higher end things. And there's also, Utah County is known for its frugality.
You remember Tyler Jackson, the real estate entrepreneur that Neil and I spoke with on Monday? He's got a $6.5 million real estate portfolio, driving a beat-up old Prius because he'd rather save than spend.
Young people want to get out, eat, have a meal that they can afford. So of those 26 restaurants, the bulk of them are the fast casual, quick sit-down type restaurants.
There's a Panera Bread, Jersey Mike's, a couple of local chains too. Once this business park is complete, it's going to have 1 million square feet of office space, retail, and a hotel.
What kind of businesses can't make it work here, though, right? I mean, look, you're in the business of selling space to businesses. What kind of businesses do you look at and go,
That's a great question. One thing we're trying to figure out, how do we bring some higher-end retailers, right? They need people that want to make luxury purchases, not just convenience purchases or essential purchases.
But that goes back to the demographics, right? You got a lot of young families with young kids who are scraping for every penny. They're not going high-end, right? They're going to the fast cash you were talking about.
Yeah. We're changing, we're evolving, we're trying to create a place for that. We're in conversation with some of those national anchors. We need 1 or 2 to make the jump.
What he's talking about are high-end retailers that attract other businesses. And before they open up shop, those anchors need to know that people will be willing to spend. And that's where the opportunity, all the young workers living in Utah County, become an obstacle.
What's the pitch? Make the pitch.
Yeah. Make the pitch?
Yeah, tell me.
It gets
Put up or shut up, pal.
No, it's tough. It's tough. I almost went back to the normal pitch, which is you got 150,000 college students who live right here. I mean, but again, that
doesn't do it.
I'm a high-end retailer. I don't want college kids, man.
It's tough, Kai. You asked the right question. Maybe I need to refine my pitch. I think we're starting with the pitch of it doesn't exist. I mean, this is one of the fastest growing counties in the nation, right? Do you want to miss it?
The thing about demographics is that you can project them out into the future. And with a third of the population under 18 in this county, you know those kids are going to grow up and become consumers themselves. There is opportunity in those trend lines, of course, but obstacles too, which is why next week on The Age of Work, we're going to a place we could kind of see way out in the distance from Daniel's window.
We have a lot of employees that live out there and commute.
That's a schlep, man. Took us 45 minutes yesterday in the middle of the day.
It's pretty nasty, isn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of bad.
One of the fastest growing cities in the region.
It's incredible what is happening out there from a kind of residential standpoint. It's still a little early to try to get the commercial to match up with that residential.
Obstacle meets opportunity. That's coming next week. Coming up.
I think upper management just realized that, hey, we're sitting on a gold mine here.
And all that artificial intelligence gold ain't cheap, you know. First, though, let's do the numbers. Dow Industrial's off 108 points today, 0.25%, 42,319. The NASDAQ lost 162 points, 0.8%, 19,298. S&P 500 is down 31 points, about 0.5%, 59 and 39 there. Tesla shares took a beating today after President Trump mused he might cut all of the government contracts and subsidies to Elon Musk's companies. This was in response to Musk, of course, calling Trump's tax and spending bill, this is a quote, an abomination. Tesla shares fell more than 14% today. In related news, shares of Trump media also took a hit, falling 8%. You had to read all those tweets to believe it. It was, yeah. Bonds down, yield on the 10-year T-note rose 4.39%. You're listening to Marketplace.
The Numbers is supported by Odoo.com, your entire business on one platform. Marketplace is supported by Viking, committed to exploring the world in comfort, offering a small ship experience with a shore excursion included in every port and onboard cultural enrichment. Discover more at Viking.com. And by Mercury. Mercury offers banking and financial software to help businesses do more in one place. Learn more at Mercury.com. And by This Old House Radio Hour podcast, answering listeners' DIY and renovation questions and diving into design and building science trends. This Old House Radio Hour podcast, available in podcast apps.
WNYC support comes from New Jersey Department of Transportation, committed to making our roadways safer. NJDOT reminds listeners to slow down, stay off their phones, and drive responsibly. Together we can help save lives and make our roadways safer.
I used to visit all the very gay places.
Seth MacFarlane is famous for creating and starring in Family Guy. He's also a 5-time Grammy-nominated singer, and now he's recorded an album of unreleased music originally written for Frank Sinatra.
Only now do I feel like I'm equipped to pull something like this off.
Our conversation with Seth MacFarlane on the next morning edition from NPR News.
Weekday mornings on WNYC.
You're listening to Marketplace on WNYC in the 7 o'clock hour of All Things Considered. Criticized for its high cost, but still selling out nearly everywhere. Nintendo's sequel to their popular Switch console releases as a trade war squeezes the video game industry. We're going to have all that and more at 7. Stay with us.
This is Marketplace. I'm Kai Ryssdal. President Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping had a call today. Trump described it as very good. The Chinese description was more neutral, but the two leaders did agree that their negotiators would meet again soon to talk trade. It does seem pretty clear, though, that President Trump doesn't really want a deeper trade relationship with China. Quite the opposite, in fact, which is pretty consequential when you consider this is the world's two biggest economies we are talking about here. Sharon O'Halloran is a professor of political economy at Columbia University, also Trinity College in Dublin. Professor, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
We hear from the president and from several of his cabinet secretaries that what they are looking for is a strategic decoupling from China. And I guess the first question that has to be asked is, what does that mean?
So over the last decade or so, the United States has increasingly relied on China to produce the goods that are designed and innovated in the United States. Consequently, the decoupling is trying to alter the structure of the global productive system, where China can't have a hold on what happens in the productivity of the United States. And I think that's the key. What they're trying to do is to make U.S. production less dependent on China.
That sounds like a big swing. And I guess my next question is, can the government of the United States get there with tariffs and some student visa cancellations?
So tariffs changed the calculus. What we've seen in the first Trump administration with higher tariffs and the trade wars was a nearshoring of production, moving it away from Asia, China in particular, to our partner countries, Mexico and Canada. Now, with some of the tensions that have risen there and the second round that we have here, it's a new calculus that's taking place. By changing the costs, the administration definitely changes the incentives of outsourcing and the benefits of outsourcing, and gives greater benefits to produce domestically.
You know, the trading relationship with the United States and China has been built up over at least a decade. The president is trying to undo it now in a matter of months. My question to you is, how long do you think it might reasonably take to reconfigure or decouple strategically, as the president likes to say, from China?
So it will take a significant amount of increased costs for them to move the production process. That's $1 billion plant. They will have to actually build new plants elsewhere and make sure that they have the capability to produce the intermediary parts that they need to produce the finished product. So it is going to take a very long time, and it will be very costly to change that whole supply chain structure in the short term. In the intermediary term, that's really a 3 to 5 year period, they'll be able to do it. But if you're expecting 6 months for Apple to be completely change everything over, that's not going to happen.
Let me get you to the cost of this thing, because it will be, as you said, expensive in the billions and billions and billions of dollars for companies to reshore their plants and their manufacturing and all of that. They are not likely to just eat those costs, right? It's going to come down to the rest of us.
Exactly. The producers can absorb some of those costs, but those costs will be given to the American consumer. And there's really no way for producers or us to get around that. That will lead to increased inflation, and it'll just reduce the standard of living of American families.
So look, here's a value judgment question, and if you want to duck it, I understand. But does it make sense then that the president's trying to do this?
I don't believe that if you want to achieve a more level playing field in the global economy, it's not clear that increasing tariffs by 50 and 100% is going to be effective. The biggest barriers to trade are really non-tariff barriers, regulations, restrictions on procurement, and those types of things. That is where the sticky parts are of global trade. And this is not a way to address